stakeholders here. I think we have some new members, some old members joining, and some are very consistent to the COP. We are very grateful for that to learn from each other through this community of practice. Today's session we have planned in a different way, where not to discuss on the technical topics, but it's not a technical session, but more towards the understanding about, as CoreStack is an open source platform working on building a DPI. The way we wanted to discuss with all our partners is how should we govern the data that is being collectively collected so far with the support of all the partners. So the objective is not to finalize anything, but to have a clear steps towards how do we build a shared governance framework, and we can work together to build this governance framework. So that's the objective for today's session. And before we start with our agenda, I think we already had circulated the draft document, which we could which we could write in terms of our own thinking. But this is a very open document. We are today would be a very crucial to understand from partners also how do they envision and how do they think this shared governance framework should look like, or what are the critical points to be considered. So as you are aware, like currently CoreStack has been grown, like we have, you must be, some of you must be accessing the dashboards, like the Stewards dashboard. You must have been seeing that it has been accessible by more than 15 plus organizations, slowly growing up. And also the existing partners are scaling up to multiple districts who had started with one district, but now moving around to 5 districts or 8 districts. With that's the scale we are also had coming up with the new partners onboarding. So this pressing issue, or we want to be very clear and transparent with the from the CoreStack partners perspective. Like with this growth, an important question naturally it comes to our mind, like how do we remain as transparent and open while ensuring that the community's data, which is collected, or how do we continue to retain that the control over the information is transparent to partners, transparency to the communities. Today we'll also talk more and listen from you more from the angle of ownership, angle of from accountability, and how do we have that community data rights preserved within the community. So these are some of the questions which might has been arised in formal and informal conversations among while we rolling out our implementation in different landscapes. So the primary objective for today would be more on this shared understanding on the governance framework. I would also quickly give a brief understanding how we at CoreStack are currently trying to manage the platform, or how we are managing the data. So you must you must have referred that in the document we have explicitly mentioned most of the geospatial data which is being carried out. It has been, we had some computing infrastructure support at IIT Delhi, and this has been hosted in AWS with reliable access to all the users. And most of this data which is being developed is being open for everybody to access. This is from the set of secondary data source which is being collected, especially from the data sets like land use, terrain, watershed, NREGA assets, soil maps, aquifer maps, which are already a public access data. And we are using some geospatial algorithms, and also we are using the machine learning models to process this to make it as user friendly and also useful for the partners to use these data sets to build their own use cases as well. So I think we are not facing any challenge over this public ported data, but the concern is towards the approach towards the primary community data, which is collected from the Commons Connect, especially with the resource mapping data, especially with the planning data, where this has been the process involved a consultation, PR exercise, Gram Sabha meetings, where the community sit and the facilitators from the partner NGOs work together to record this data on Commons Connect. So maybe we would need to have a different approach. So far, how are we practicing or how are we doing to keep it as transparent as possible is one way. There are two approaches which we are following up during the partners onboarding. We currently do not have any partnership statement signed up with any of the partners. It is like which we want to fix it up by having some statements like partnership statement on ownership onto the data sharing norms, which would be coming as an output post this COP. So one is how we are keeping it transparent is one, at the stage one is when we are onboarding the stewards or the CRPs onto the platform before training, or we are trying to give an option for them whether their data would be visible on the steward dashboard. Now, what type of data? It could be their name, gender, education, which where they are working, which landscape they are working. So this has been one way of transparent approach to take the consent while onboarding these stewards, because this is also important because there could be some voluntary CRPs or Narega Rozgar Sevak who could be working on ad hoc basis along with the stewards who are being associated with the partners. So that's why we have kept it very transparent to take that ask before onboarding onto the steward dashboard. So this is one way of proposition we are currently working in our process. The second is during
Samita,
the yes.
sorry to interrupt. Do you also intend on sharing the document on the screen because it's not visible
No,
in
no, I
case
am
it
not
is.
sharing. No, no, I
Okay,
am not sharing. We will share that
okay,
while we
okay.
are having the conversation. I'm just giving a background, like what is the purpose of our call, like an introduction. Because
Got
today
it.
we'd be more listening from our partners rather than we speaking up. But what I want to give, I would just want to set up the tone, like what are the points we need to discuss more onto this call. Is that okay with everybody, or you want me to present right away? I can do that.
Yeah, I think might be good to refer to.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Give me some. Taru, would you able to share it? I think my screen has just 1 minute. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Okay. Is it visible now?
It's visible, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So yes, so I just wanted to share you a little background about existing process, what we are following, till what level we have kept it transparent. We agree that this is a collective effort. We are not saying that this is the right process to do, but there are certain gaps which we wanted to address collectively and together. One is how do we think about governing the community data? That's the crucial part we'll be discussing more. But as I was explaining about all of you about the different areas where core stack is keeping it efforts. Like for example, let me come to point number one from the infrastructure reliability. So which I was trying to explain that we are using AWS server, and which is having a minimum downtime, and we have a high availability of data, as well as we are having the standard protocols followed for the backups. So if you have any questions, maybe we'll have more like interactive sort of discussion. So probably I would take a pause from here on the first point to learn from your own reflections. And is there any point which we need to discuss one by one, point by point? We can go back. I think that's the structure we wanted to follow. Yeah, yeah. So Taru, do you want to add any more points?
No, I think we can take up questions based on like if there are any questions related to how the infrastructure works or how backups are taken. So we also have members from our tech team who would be able to best answer those. Um, so yeah, would encourage everyone, whatever questions we have, uh, we should discuss them now.
So, does anyone from the participants would like to share his reflection, his or her reflections? I mean, it's pretty much straightforward process which has been usually adopted in the industry from the infrastructure reliability perspective.
Drone, Himani, I think you had some questions back then, so it'll be good to bring those up here so that if those questions are there with someone else also, they can be discussed in an open forum. Resolve everyone's doubt.
Maybe I think some you might need some breathing space to think. Okay, probably yeah, we'll park that point here from the infrastructure reliability. Maybe you'll have more questions as we go to point number 3 and 4, so forth. So in the second point, we are talking openness of secondary data sets, which like most of these data sets are already built from the secondary data, which is publicly available and published. And we are also using the same standards which has been followed, like the geospatial format of CC BY. This will include the first time created data sets and also the processed and redistributed data set. Now, these data sets are being available at one directory or collected at one place, which would be available for every user who can easily access from our dashboards, from our websites too. So quite an easy trail to get these data sets. And if anybody is interested to know more about how to access these data sets, or where are these data sets available, we can talk more on this. But I would also request my colleague Aman, who has joined, if he can put a thought like where are we currently locating all these secondary data sets. Over to you, Aman.
Yeah, hi Sami. Hi everyone. So most of the data that we are, computing is stored on S3, right? So like most of the pan-India layers are on S3 or someplace in Google Drive, and they are available on Google Earth Engine as well for someone who want to do some computation or operation on Earth Engine. And all those links are available in the G app link sheet. Maybe Sami, you can show that. So everyone can access that from there. So the Pange G app, there's a link there. Yeah. So you can visualize these Pange layers from here only, and we keep adding more and more layers here as we bring that into our stack. And the link here on the top right for the sheet link. Sami, maybe you can click that link.
Yeah. You're talking about this, no?
Yeah. So this Google Sheet have all the GE links and Drive or S3 links wherever that layer is published. So anyone can access those layer from here. Yeah. Over to you, Sami.
Thank you, Aman. So, do anyone have any questions on this part?
Yeah, Sami, just to
Sami,
yeah, sorry.
Yes,
yes,
Pavan.
Kapil,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes, I just
No,
wanted
no,
to add.
there are no question.
Sorry, there are some lags. Okay, yeah, Pawan, you go on, then I will add.
Yeah, so there are no questions from my side. Based on that, we are using these data sets as and when required more frequently. Please keep continue this work, make these things available, and we are the most benefited, I think. This is the comment from my side right now. Thank you.
Yeah, so, Sami, just to add, there are some technical terminology like AWS S3. So I just wanted to give a small introduction to that. So AWS is an hosting services where we can spin off of the compute. So to generate this data set, we need the compute feature. So and S3 is an storage services. Similar like Google Drive, S3 is also an storage services. So just wanted to add explanation on this technical aspect. Also on backup process. Uh, so I just wanted to elaborate it because this is the backbone of the entire system. If anything goes wrong with the system, there are lesser chances because Amazon availability is almost 99.9999%. But if anything goes wrong, how we keep our data set safe? So to just to add more detail to that process, we always keep backup per day, and we push this to outside of the running system so that if anything goes wrong with the running system, we can use those backup and quickly do the disaster recovery. And also we are daily, so this term called integrity testing. So daily backup, we are also consuming it for our testing purposes so that we are sure that these backup processes are working well. We took the backup, restore on our dev system, restore on our UAT system, and we generally check thoroughly that it is working well. So just to give you confidence on the system that if anything goes wrong, we can quickly recover the system in no time.
Um, Thanks, Kapil. If you could also comment on the scalability of this system, right? Because that has also been one of the questions from the partners. So, for instance, currently we have about 1,600 villages that we are covering. Let's say the scale goes to 10,000. So, uh, uh, are we anticipating any challenges with respect to that, or is the infrastructure fully proof to be able to handle any kind of scale?
Yeah, so to answer this question, we also evolve with the time. So it's a constant learning process. So initially, we were only uh, dependent on AWS infra and Google Earth Engine infra. So there were bottleneck in the scaling. So after we realizing it, we shifted to the local compute system. So we have somewhere a 7 to 8 workstation, which is a server grade system, and parallelly we can scale horizontally, vertically, any means. So scalability is not a challenge now. Right now, even layer generation is taking some more time in our benchmark standard, but we are also working on that. So our plan is to whatever extent we can remove that earth engine dependency and generate all the data set on the local compute side, because there we have plenty of GPUs and we can use the GPUs to expedite that process. So then our layer generation process will also eventually drill down to very smaller number, right? So there is no challenge of scalability. We are also planning to move in cluster-based system, or also we have a plan to keep evolving the infra so that we can generate the larger data set very quickly, and also the layer generation process significantly can be reduced. I hope I answered the question, Tadu.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions that any of the partners may have?
So just coming from non-technical background, I have
Yeah.
a small question. So you are taking daily backups, right? So every day backup replace the previous day's backup, or you maintain the backup for X number of days? Just I
Yeah.
wanted to understand.
No, that's a very good question. So I also forgot to add that. So generally in archive we keep 7 days of data. So if anything goes wrong, we can restore any day's data. So if I, let's say I took the backup today, I have last 7 days backup with me.
Thanks, Kapil.
Yeah, I'm Bhavna from Arogyam. Tanu, I'm joining for the first time this meeting, but I just wanted to understand from you is if there is any updation policy. How I saw that in the list you already have land use land cover for 24-25. How quickly do we update for the next year, and is there any specific process that you have defined for that?
Aman, you want?
Yeah, so I can answer that. So currently we are following a process that we update our data annually. So after July, we start that updation process. So we have already started that. So in a month or so, you will have all the data updated. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, so for 25-26, we should have it by September, October.
Yeah, most probably, yeah.
Okay. And what's the accuracy like for the land use land cover? And I'm sorry if this is not the right forum for this, but yeah, just to understand.
Aman?
So, uh, so basically, this LULC is generated using remote science data. So there are few papers that we can share, and I think they are available on our website as well. So you can get reference from there. But
But do we do any validation for any of these classification?
so some validation was done during model training and all. But no, I don't think any validation is done after that.
Maybe we can take this question a bit later, probably. Will that be because we have 30 minutes left?
Sure,
Is
sure.
that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll be very, very happy to address all these technical questions. But like probably we'll also discuss the other parts which would be important for today's discussion. Yeah. Should we go ahead?
Sure, sure.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, so I think the first two are preliminary, very, very important part before we directly jump into the governance framework. So the third important point, which were most crucial and would be very important from the others to learn from the organization who are working on the ground from pretty much a decade or more than that. So how do we ensure the openness of this primary data sets now? Because as I was explaining in my opening statements to that, we are trying to collect some data through Commons Connect, especially the resource mapping. The resource mapping data includes about the social, economic, and ecological village profile about the settlement wise. It also capture the current situation of existing wells, water bodies, and crop base of information. consulted by the community, and then what sort of NRM demands which have been recorded during this PRA process or within the Gram Sabha meetings. So these are the most crucial data sets, which we need to agree upon. Like one way, I mean, there are two angles, like as we highlighted. One is on the ownership part, another is who has to use, or what set of rights has to be set up from the data which has been collected. The natural agreement with many of them would come up that the ownership would be. We also strongly believe that the data belongs to the community, and if it is anyway being discussed in Gram Sabhas and it has been recorded, so which has been officially been part of the meetings at the Vard Sabhas and also at the Panchayat level. So the first agreement, we believe that this data belongs to the community. I mean, that's the ownership part of it. But how are we recognizing that ownership is still little gray in terms of how do we give back to the community? That's the point where we want to discuss. Like the second area is on the usage rights. Now, because most of the time into this. We are saying this is a community data, but should be there certain process for the usage rights of data. Like for example, we had some vague ideas like whether the community should reserve the right to decide whether the data has to be published onto the portals like landscape stewardship dashboard, or it can be downloaded by anybody, or there should be any user restrictions provided. So these are some of the questions which we would want to discuss in the next 15-20 minutes, and explore what all modalities can be used to acknowledge the ownership, and also understand the process of reserving the rights. Like what rights, what are we talking about usage right? Is it that whether the community would decide how to withdraw, whether they want to make their village data be used for research purpose or non-commercial purpose, or does anybody have to be accessed? How do they access it? Like, these are some of the questions. Now, I mean, Taru, I would request you to facilitate with the Q&A, which we had discussed internally. Probably that would also help everybody to think around probably this question is. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Do we have, I mean, I think we can straight away begin with the questions. Do we have any questions in terms of, how do we seek the consent of the community when it comes to putting their data out on public dashboards on CoStack? Yeah, so I think let's go step by step. So we can begin with questions on the ownership part, and then move to the usage part. So how should the consent be sought from the community, right? I think Samita was discussing the two steps that we had. One is that we collected during the formal agreement that we have with each of the organizations, that um, since this is community data, it will be discussed in the Gram Sabha, that it will be put out openly on public dashboards for anyone to be able to see and access. And then it can, of course, be renewed periodically with the help of the CRPs. The second is more explicit in terms of explicitly we can see consent after the DPR completion, when the CRPs can then discuss with the community their what all data they have collected, what could be the potential use cases by different parties of their data, right? And then get them on board as to whether they want to give consent on having that data in the open, right? So those are the two approaches that we had thought of. But yeah, any questions, any thoughts on this so that we can collaboratively kind of figure out how to put this up?
Hi, hi Taru.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for this session. It's very, very helpful. Taru, also just wanted to check with the group here and specifically from you that in the core in this core like the core stick data sets which is there on on the portal, it's not the personal data, right? It's not personally identified data. So just wanted to check community consent would be definitely needed even for the FGDs and all, but just wanted to check do we need to renew the consent specifically also in case of if we collect the data on NRM basis, because if we are taking consent, to whom consent we need to take? It's from the Gram Sabha or from the Sarpanch, or to whom? Just my question, because when it is the household level data, we need to get permission from the uh, house owner, say for from the respondent. But in this case, where it is the community level data, it's not one person's data, so and it's not personally identifier as well. So just a thought, just wanted to check with you.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, we do not have any personally identifiable data that we collect during the entire planning process. Yeah. I think Samita has also put out some sort of agreement that we can have at the start of the project, right? Which acknowledges that. Um, so while we're discussing in the Gram Sabha, let's say where there are a bunch of community members, there is Sarpanch. Yeah, so these are just some thoughts. Uh, the data is owned by the community. The core stack acts as a technical custodian of the data because we are the ones who are kind of, collectively hosting it on our servers, then making it public. Then all the partners would respect the community's decisions regarding the data access, sharing, the kind of usage that it can have. Should it be revoked after a certain point of time? Um, yeah. So any thoughts on this, on how
Yeah,
should?
sorry, this is Onindo. I totally echo with Himani. Uh, it's true that there's no PII in the data that you guys collect, but
Yeah.
I think a few moments back, there was an idea about creating a place which is so specifically towards presenting or making the data of DPRs open. So
Right.
if DPRs are made open as open access, I think it may backfire to if we have data of the stewards that are collecting those DPRs or creating those,
Mm.
finalizing those. It might backfire on them if the Gram Sabha knows about it. So maybe there's the place where we need some consent.
Could you elaborate on that? Like in what ways might it
So
backfire?
DPRs are generally submitted to the panchayat, right?
Right.
Yeah. So if we have DPR data and we make it open,
Mm-hmm.
and if it goes towards panchayat that we don't know about this DPR, and why is a DPR of a village made open for everybody to see, they might not agree to making it public. So I think that's the place where we need consent, that
Mm.
this is also a part of our technical custodian, that we take data, we ask the stewards to map these, create DPR for the
Mm.
panchayat, and we are also making it public.
Mm. Right. Uh, right. So you're saying that maybe the other the other approach that we discussed with which is that when the DPRs are completed and submitted, or discussed during the Gram Sabha, the consent is explicitly sought.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
is captured and
not
only
even
then they are.
we might not know if it is discussed in the Gram Sabha, right? We have the
Yeah, I mean,
DPR
there could be
before it
ways
is
to capture that.
presented in the
Uh,
Gram Sabha. So we cannot assume that it is, discussed in the Gram Sabha. I'm saying in general, if we have a DPR, we might want to take the consent of the Gram Sabha or the community, that
right,
or the stewards collective, that if we can make it public or not. Does that put any threat on you?
of course. Of course. Yeah, so
Tarun, earlier we discussed, while resource mapping, we are collecting some data of individuals. So, their phone number and their resource details. So, is this come under the DPTP Act?
the phone numbers of only the stewards, right? Like not the community members.
In resource mapping, we are collecting a lot more data of the individuals, name, resources, uses, and might be in a phone number also.
Right. Yeah, we basically have the beneficiary name and the demands that they have put.
I think I request others to mute because there's a background noise coming in. Yeah. Yes, Himani, you are raising a hand.
Oh no, Shamira, it's a previous one, so I forgot to lower down. But just wanted to also check with drone and others that uh but that data it doesn't appear in the DPR, right? The name, the phone number, and all. It's encrypted, or someone can look at it.
No, let me quickly jump in here. In our DPRs, only in the planning section, when there is an individual demand which is coming, then we are showing their name, beneficiaries, father's or husband name, and from which settlement. We are not capturing, we are not showing mobile numbers, etc. on the DPR.
Yeah, so
Please.
we cannot even capture the name, as to we can keep it for
No,
ourselves
no.
or like use it for research, but it needs to be encrypted throughout, so that no way they can be triangulated using the location, because so you know the location and have a name, so we cannot really
No,
join
but
them in
this
our
is,
data.
I would slightly differ the context, Anindya, because the purpose of this tool is to develop the DPR, which is where the planning is intended to know the collectively what the village is asking. So usually this is not something Commons Connect has built. This is the existing process which is being followed by the community and also being facilitated by the organizations. So if there are individual demands which are coming up, then it has to be recorded. So I don't see that should be maybe how are
Yeah,
we
so
going to address
DPR
that?
used to
Yeah.
be exclusive to the Gram Panchayat, right? When we are talking about making it open, I'm just saying that we should remove the names, keep the demands, of course, that it is an individual demand from this particular village. We might not want to uh, say their names or
I
have
would
consent of
also
saying their
want to
names.
hear from others what the others thinks from this point. Like, I mean, it would be we just wanted to know from the others as well. Like, what is the thinking on the proposition where Anindya is proposing? Pavan or Drone or Himani or Prakash. There's so many partners here. You can share your thinking.
Maybe name and names, wherever the person's names, maybe they may be masked. I think that
So,
is, or that
so,
was,
hmm,
yeah, we are also working towards that.
right.
So some point of time, we also thought that these names be masked.
Right. So I think when we are making it public, masking them, of course, will not be an issue. But if we can take a moment to also discuss, the kind of risks that we are anticipating if they are not masked, like maybe just one or two examples. So that will probably, also help us discuss other things that we need to keep in mind. So if there are beneficiary names that are there, what could be the potential risks because of which we want that, we should encrypt them and not have them in the public forum, public portal. Pavanji and India.
So far, we don't have any consequences of displaying those names, but we would like to be very cautious with respect to the data governance practices. That's it. We would like to be cautious because there's an individual name. So even I also don't like to be displayed in any other portal, right? Pavan. Pavan, I do not wish my name be displayed for the general public, across globe, right? That's. We haven't. We haven't faced any. Issue right now, but we would like to be more cautious. That's it.
Okay, right. And drone
So
does
can we put in other way that should that flexibility given to the user, like for example, the steward while onboarding, or using, they can select, okay, I'm open, I'm giving my consent to display, I'm not giving my consent to display, because that feature we can add into the code stack, at every stage. Probably he's comfortable to share his consent to put it on public portal, but probably after 2 years he doesn't want, so he can always revoke back. That mechanism is possible to build, where instead of taking that understanding that, okay, it should not be published, or it should be published. Maybe that flexibility should be left in the hands of stewards. Let them decide if they want to keep their data open for access for others, or if they don't want to. That flexibility can be provided. This is the other way of thinking, but
Yeah, that may be true, but what if the name is not available in the DPR? So how is it, going to affect anybody who is accessing the data? Is there any harm? Is there any, is that an obstacle, or is that a bottleneck if we do not have the name on the DPR publicly displayed?
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
not
The beneficiary names, Samita, is there a significance of having the beneficiary names in the DPRs that are open? Like significance for other people who might want to access it. If not, then I think masking it may not be.
Probably we can park this question. I think we should also test it on the field, like what will happen if we are trying to mask it, and just showing the type of demands. Maybe this is very good feedback, but yes, we will have to note it down and see it how it is impacting on the partners' works, or let us see on that. Because currently, see, on this call, we cannot take a decision. Okay, we cannot say that, okay, we are just, this is an important, equal understanding, shared understanding. I think this, we have not thought from this perspective, but it's good to know that this is also important. Like, yeah. So from the stewards, there are two things which we are discussing. One is beneficiaries visibility, another is stewards visibility. Beneficiaries visibility, I clearly agree with all of you and also Anandya that it can be masked, which has nothing to do with which village, what is the name, and the respective village can always have the detailed DPR downloaded. But from the steward's data visibility, what we are proposing is that let's the steward decide whether his or her data to be visible. Like when we're talking about data, it's not about Aadhaar or phone number or something. It's like their name, their education, and what are the villages they have been working under. Yeah. So that's one point. I think this is one of the area which we also wanted to discuss. Over to you, Taru.
Right. So I mean, 2 points that have come up so far is when we are having the DPRs in the open, seeking consent is definitely important. I think there is I mean, we all think along the same lines. How the consent needs to be sought is still um, not too clear. So any pointers on that before we resume, how the data can be used and stuff? How do we seek consent from the community, and how we can record it? Of course, we can see how to record it, how to capture that the consent was sought, right? That can be done via the app itself or through any other mechanism. But how do you really know? Like, how do you seek consent? Like, from whom do you seek consent? When we say community or during the Gram Sabha, how should it look like? So if there are any thoughts on that, we can take up those and then maybe move to the next point.
All right, I'll take it up. So when we are talking about taking consent, what exactly we are taking consent for?
That the DPRs will be made open source.
I think it can be taken from the Gram Sabha. We do it all the time. You
Hmm.
have to explain them what exactly is the final product of your technical custodian, and then tell them that this is going to be public. These details are going to be public, and
Right.
take the consent of either sarpanch. In some places, pradhan is the administrative head, so take
Hmm.
their consent. That is how you will get the consent of the DPR.
Right.
I think if there is because there's resource mapping. During resource mapping, if there's a consent, if you want to take consent of the beneficiary, if they want their names to be up or not, there has to be a protocol that whenever you are writing a name of the beneficiary, you ask them if do you really benefit from this, and in that process, ask them that if your name can be in the beneficiary name.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Then I think, Samita, can you actually pull up that document? It just helps in. Um,
Yeah. Sure. This is good.
yes. Yeah. Right. So, okay. Now that we have discussed the ownership part, any thoughts on the usage of this data? Right. Like, what potential use cases can we think of that we might want to um, uh, anticipate right at the start, and kind of see if any action needs to be taken for that. So the kind of we all know what kind of data we have in the DPRs, right? So do we need to put any user restrictions, which could be actually like technically tough to put, right? Given that this is open source data. So then instead, can we think of uh, like communicating to the communities as to how, in what all ways their data can be used, and help them actually give an informed consent, right, rather than just consent. So, any thoughts on the usage aspect of the DPR data? Would love if we kind of brainstorm on this, because this is going to be really important when we build out these data sharing agreements, right? And now that we have a lot of I mean a lot of CRPs have started using Commons Connect, so we do have a lot of data on the landscape stewardship network dashboard as well. So it'll be good to kind of collaboratively work this out. Any thoughts on the usage, or what kind of data literacy modules can be built for the communities to inform them as to how their data can be used, right? And then let them. So when we are discussing it in the Gram Sabha, we also put out these certain clauses in there.
Currently, we do not have any restrictions on the data which is published on the code stack, that anybody can utilize this data. I mean, anybody can download this data. So in that scenarios, like what could be the possible approaches which we can think around protecting the community owned data, I mean, in that scenarios. Because, I think like CoreStack is just a technical custodian of the whole data, which includes primary and secondary data sources. For secondary, it is very much standardized process are in place, like Kapil, Aman has explained, backup process. But with the governance mechanism for primary data is very, very tricky. And that's the reason why we are placing this more emphasis. Like, I really like the couple of suggestions which came, but also from the usage rights, we currently doesn't stop anybody from accessing, but can we give an acknowledgement back to the community? This data is being used for research, or that sort of usage rights should be applied. First of all, that is a question: should be applied it, or let it be open that anybody should have the ability to export it from the server, or every time if somebody asks for a download of a data, and request should be passed to the relevant community for the consent or for the acknowledgement. How do we do that? That's the primary thinking. We need to get some reflections on that.
Samita ji, I think we also need to look at what is the legal framework for the personal and community level data sharing mechanism. That is also very important, whether we are compliant with particular legal framework or not. So it is better that we also go and look at what type of mechanism is available within system.
Okay. Okay. So you mean to say that the Protection Act, Digital Data Protection Act?
Yeah, DPDP or any other like community data
Okay.
sharing mechanism
Okay.
kind of
Okay.
is available or not.
So you mean to say we need to ensure that we are complying to that act, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
we will. Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. Yeah, that's a valid point. That's a point we should also think in across. Yeah. And the second point is like, Because most of this data, uh, let's say, for example, we have created this DPR in 2024, and how frequently should we ask that usage right changes, whether they want to revoke after 2 years, after 3 years, or should be there is a mechanism that for every ask of the download, that consent should go back to the community, or how do we practice? Currently, we are thinking like, okay, we'll have a permission refresher for every 1 year or 2 years. I mean, this is an idle thought, but open to your thinking on this. I hope I was clear on the point which we wanted to discuss on.
Yeah, basically, what should be the frequency of renewing the consent, right? Should it align with just one DPR cycle? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, still we can park, not necessarily to be answered just now. But I think these are some of the points which would be also part of our statements, data sharing norms, which would be provided to all the partners as a formal agreement. See, this is one of the practice we are thinking to bring in, that is to have a proper formal agreement with the partners, specifically to endorse this code stack is an open source platform, and we want to have ensure few data conditions, which for example, now this data conditions or would be more specifically conveying the partners that whatever tools which are being used under code stack, the data which would be collected, it is purely an open source data. It would be what type of data can be shared, what is the mechanism we'll be following for the sharing, and what's the primary data acknowledgement process. So all this would be part of this formal agreement. In fact, we would also want to address certain specific questions which came up with a few partners discussion. One is because most of the partners, they align with the existing donor projects, like for example, they have little funding and they want to utilize their CRP on using code stack tools, but probably there could be some conflict of interest with the donor reporting and with respect to open source. Probably the donor requirement might not be completely matching with the needs, like the data has to be explicitly to particular projects and cannot be accessed for other projects or cannot be accessed for other purposes. So I mean, that's a contradictory, like that's where the governing principle would help, that while onboarding the partner, we wanted to have a formal endorsement that implementing core stack or utilization of core stack would be having certain data sharing norms, would have that acceptance that this is an open source data where other partners would participating ecosystem partners who are on the core stack would also be able to access this data, and for different purposes, could be for publications, research. So that's what the thinking we are like trying to come up with this formal agreement. I mean, how many of you really agree with this thought? We are not sure, but this is just thinking. Yeah. Uh, I take a pause here to listen from your end. Himani, Pavan, or Prakash,
No, Shamita, all questions are very
Deborah. Yeah.
relevant and very important. Also, probably this is the first call, or also I have also gone through all this all the governance norms which you have shared. Well, there was also some questions now also when other people are also sharing they're thinking about, I'm also thinking, but let's give us some time to reflect all of
Sure. Yes.
and,
Yes.
and probably we can meet one more time to discuss.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree. So I think let me quickly summarize also, like what is our ask for the support from the partners, especially our post-stack partners, is that, how do we build a common shared governance approach towards this primary data? I mean, what should be our data sharing norms? That's a primary ask, like which could be formally accepted in the form of some statement while onboarding. Okay, this is what we all collectively agreed. Maybe one or two rounds of discussion or three rounds of discussion. That should not be a problem. But it really help us to be more transparent and to build this robust public good. So that's the more thinking what we want to bring with this today's call, like to sensitize the approach. Some are coming from research background, some are coming from implementation side, some are already from the managing the whole ecosystem itself. So different stakeholders might have different thinking. And all points would be valid to put it up together to make this document as an onboarding document or partnership statement, I can say. I mean, these are some of the points which we can look into. Like, one, the holistic picture about the governance agreement itself, where all these inputs will go step by step. I would reiterate that core stack is just a technical custodian, and we formally wanted to put a stronger statement that this data belongs to the community and the usage rights belongs to the community. What we have wanted to build is how do we ensure the transparency while we are sharing this data. So that's more important for all of us to think across. And the approach is what currently we are following, which we tried to explain, like during onboarding, the stewards data visibility itself, the consent has been taken, whether that's the right approach or there should be some other. I echo with Drone's point, like he's mentioning that we should also go and check back whether it is compliant with the existing acts. So that probably we had not done, but that's a good thing to take as an input. Like we can do our own homework, like whether it is compliant to the particular existing acts. And then we'll talk about later on about data privacy and security, like how do we do that? But primary is on the consent mechanism, and the secondary is more onto the sharing. So these are the two thinking, 2 points which has to be built together, and we'll be adding more onto this governance structure. Yeah, yeah. And in fact, I was thinking maybe we can circulate the existing draft as it is, where all the partners can share their queries and questions with a larger audience, and then we come back with the next month, continue this session. Will that work, Taru?
Yeah. I think we can just add another tab in the same document, and all the partners can just add in their reflections and questions there. We can do that in a span of 2 weeks, 1 or 2 weeks. That will be great, so that we can plan at least some. We can devote at least some part of the next COP session, specifically to address those. Yeah, so broadly, 2 points, right? Like, we would love all of you to think along two lines. One is that in the kind of agreement that we want to build, that we want to keep it open source, what could be the potential queries and inhibitions that we need to address? Because we have to kind of weigh in the potential and possibilities of having building an open source framework for natural commons management, and see how can we mitigate some of the risks that we are currently anticipating, right? So that's one. And the second is that something that we could not cover in today's call, but that will also be important, is that the role of the steward is going to be very important in terms of breaking down to the communities what data is collected, what could be the potential uses of it, and then take consent. Because being open source, it is it we might be able to put in some restrictions theoretically, but practically governing how they are being actually used will be tough, right? So it is better that we take very informed consent from during the Gram Sabha itself. So, what are the things that stewards need to keep in mind, or if they were to kind of detail, what the data is about, how would they go about it? So, what are the things that it need to keep in mind essentially? So, these are the two angles that um, we need to think on. And yeah, I'll just add another tab in the same document. It's being shared by everyone. We can send it across again over email, and if all of you can put in your thoughts in a span of, let's say, a week or two, that will be great. Yeah. Thank you. Samita, anything from your side?
No, not really. Thank you, everybody, for your patient listening. And Bhavna, we can always connect you on one-on-one. I'll connect to Aman. You can share back your email ID on the text so that we can reach you and answer back to your queries.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And anyone who has not spoken, do you want to have any final reflections, please? Kaustubh or
हेलो मैम
yes, Prakash.
मैम एक अनदर मीटिंग में थे इसलिए हम कुछ थोड़ा बोल नहीं पा रहे थे मैम ये बोलना था कि
Yes, हाँ जी.
जो कंसर्न फॉर्म का जो बात ही हो रहा था कि जब रिसोर्स मैपिंग जब हम लोग कैटलिस्ट करते हैं और उसी टाइम ही हम लोग कुछ सिंपल लैंग्वेज में कंसर्न फॉर्म मिल जाए तो हम लोग समझा सके कि आपके डाटा हम लोग क्यों ले रहे हैं, किस पर्पस में ले रहे हैं, एट ए टाइम हो जाएगा तो इजिबल होगा। क्योंकि हमारे कैटलिस्ट ग्राउंड लेवल में काम कर रहे हैं तो कमिटी का एक विश्वास बना हुआ रहता है। और मैम ये कॉमन कनेक्ट टूल्स में क्या एक ऐसा फीचर्स ऐड हो सकता है, चाहे वो डिजिटली हो, एक रिकॉर्ड टाइप का, कि हम लोग वहीं कंसर्न टाइम का एक रिकॉर्ड ले लें, या फिर कोई फॉर्मेट रहे वो फ़ोटो खींच के ही वहीं अपलोड हो जाए। इससे क्या होगा कि डॉक्यूमेंट रखने का कोई रिस्क नहीं होगा। हम लोग क्या कंसर्न रखते जाएँगे, एक साथ जब डीपीआर हम लोग का फाइनल आएगा तो उसी में ही कंसर्न फॉर्म भी अटैच रहेगा।
It's a good idea. I think I've noted it down, but we'll work back with the team where is a possibility to so that it can address both the queries, masking
हाँ
wala
मैम,
bhi
ये भी हो
and
सकता है ना कि जिस तरह अभी हम लोग जब रिसोर्स मैपिंग करते हैं वेल का फोटो डालते हैं, फिर आपका जितना भी मेंटेनेंस का भी जो फोटो अपलोड करते हैं जो डीपीआर जनरेट करने में, तो उसी में एक ऑप्शन कंसेंट का हो जाए और वही फोटो ही अपलोड करने का रह जाएगा, वहाँ दिख जाएगा। तो फाइनल जब डीपीआर डाउनलोड होगा तो लास्ट में वो कंसेंट भी रहेगा। इससे क्या होगा, जब हम लोग ग्राम सभा मीटिंग में जब भी दिखा सकें तो कंसेंट भी लास्ट में अटैच रहेगा वो डीपीआर का रिपोर्ट।
या एग्जैक्टली प्रकाश, तो यही पॉइंट था हमारा भी कि क्योंकि ये डीपीआर को तो ग्राम सभा में डिस्कस कर ही रहे हैं, उसी दौरान हम इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली या ऐप के थ्रू एक कंसेंट ले ले इस डीपीआर पे। There are two things which we have noted down and दोनों points important है, and this is exactly helping us to as an acknowledgement that हम जो process follow करेंगे वो सही रहेगा। मतलब हम भी यही चाहते हैं कि जब ग्राम सभा में डीपीआर को लेके डिस्कशन चल रहा है वहीं पर कंसेंट ले ले उस ग्राम सभा की। Okay. Thank you, Prakash. Yeah. Anybody else like Pradeep?
मैम
प्रदीप
मैम
सेवा जगत से?
मेरा एक बात मैं
हाँ,
बोल
ये
रहा था।
संजीव। संजीव, हाँ
हाँ
बोलो।
मैं बोल रहा था कि मैं जब डीपीआर लेकर के प्रखंड स्तर पर वीडियो के सामने रखता हूँ, इस गांव का ऐसा प्रॉब्लम है,
हाँ।
तो उनका उनका मतलब ये प्रश्न नहीं रहता है, लेकिन उन्होंने बात ये बताया कि आपने क्या डीपीआर जो है तो समुदाय के साथ बैठक करके तैयार किया है, और इसके लिए हमको
ओके।
जो है सो इसके लिए हमको रजिस्टर उनको दिखाना पड़ता है कि हाँ, मैंने युक्त तिथि को वहाँ एक बैठक किया था समुदाय के साथ, जिसके बाद वहाँ से मैंने टोटल एड सेटलमेंट लिया, एवं वहाँ का जो इशू है उसको भी लिया। फिर भी हम चाहते हैं कि जिस तरह मैं अभी, जैसे प्रकाश जी बोले कि जिस तरह मैं रिपेयरिंग के लिए कुआं या तालाब का रिपेयरिंग के लिए उसका फोटो ऐड कर सकता हूँ, तो एक अगर ऐसा हो कि जहाँ हम लोग सेटलमेंट ऐड करते हैं, वहां ग्राम सभा का तस्वीर अगर लग जाए तो फिर ये प्रश्न आना बंद हो जाए।
ओके, ठीक है। थैंक यू संजीव जी। ठीक है, फिर स्निग्धा या फिर किसी और को कुछ कहना है? Then we wind up our today's COP. This is the first discussion on data sharing and governance. हम लोग दोबारा जुड़ेंगे अगले महीने, इसको कंटिन्यू करेंगे ताकि हम एक स्ट्रक्चर बन पाए। और आज बहुत अच्छे फीडबैक्स आए हैं हमारे पास, इसको हम वर्कआउट करेंगे, व्हाट आर द पॉसिबिलिटीज। एंड थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग फॉर दिस कॉल। थैंक यू एवरीबॉडी।
थैंक यू।
थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू।